some ingredients and some of the stuff that we'll be talking about. I just wanted to drop those in there before I start. That way I can get to my talk. So some of these things I'll talk about later, but as you can see in the chat, I just dropped in the equipment, some books, and then there's a couple links, and then I'll get started. So let's see here. And one last one, and I'll be done. Then we can start. I'll be done to start. Okay. I'll go ahead and start. So I won't be able to see anyone, will I? Okay, that's okay. Gallery view. All right, everyone. I'm here to talk about sprouted nuts and sprouted nut milks. And I don't know if any of you have any experience about that, but I'm just going to go ahead and start out by assuming that you haven't. And I'm going to talk about what sprouting is and why we would need to do it before we eat our nuts. Now, essentially, nuts and seeds have evolved over time to survive our digestive tract. So they have certain substances which are concentrated specifically in the nuts and seeds. That's what the plants do because they want to ensure the survival of their offspring. So the design of the plants is to have animals eat the nuts or seeds and then drop them out the backside so they can grow into a new plant. Now, what they do is they concentrate certain substances like phytic acid and lectins, which by design block, inhibit, and disrupt our digestion. Now, what we can do to mitigate that is sprout, soak, or germinate. I'm going to kind of use those words interchangeably. There's a lot of debate about what specifically each one means, but essentially it's activating the nut or seed so that it goes into a growth phase where it becomes more digestible and therefore more nutritious. At that point with our product, because I also have a product company, we're called Rich Nuts. We make gourmet sprouted nuts. At that point, we season them and dehydrate them. But what we're going to do today, after we've already soaked them, these are the ones I've soaked for today's workshop. We're going to go ahead and drain the water and make them into nut milks. I wanted to start also by letting you guys know a little bit about myself. My name is Rich. I'm a retired firefighter and paramedic. I started out this business because I saw some of my own digestive issues, and it turned out to be really beneficial for other people. They loved what I was doing, and it kind of sprung into a business. Now, I used to work on brush fires, and when I would be on these brush fires, I was eating a lot of trail mix and raw cashews specifically. And I started to experience all kinds of GI issues. I had gas, bloating, brain fog, that kind of stuff. And that's not really what you want to have when you're on the side of the mountain. So I started working on putting these different nuts and sprouting them and activating them. And what that did was it helped me digest them a little bit better and get more nutrition and energy out of them. Now, let's go into it. So this first one I'm going to start with is going to be a sprouted pecan. Earlier today, I put these in water, so they've already been soaked. As you can see in the chat, I put in how long we soak each nut. These are pecans, so we want to soak them between 4 and 6 hours. I've already done that, so I'm just going to go ahead and drain the water out here. And this is a half a cup of nuts, half a cup of pecans. Then we just go ahead and drop them in our blender. And I'm going to fill this with water. It's 6 cups of water. I've already pre-measured. So we put the 6 cups of water in along with a half a cup of nuts. And one of the things I want to make sure that I emphasize here is that you have full permission to take these recipes and play with them and make them your own. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to experiment and play. I'm going to use, I like to put fat in there because it helps it just get like a creamier, richer taste. I'm going to go ahead and put in a teaspoon of, I like to use coconut oil. So I got a coconut oil, 1 teaspoon. And my favorite thing to sweeten with are dates, but we used them all up in the last workshop. So today I'm going to use 3 teaspoons of maple syrup. It's another good sweetener. There's also stevia, you can see here, honey, these are other options. And I like to sometimes put vanilla in when we want to make a little bit more of a N.O.G instead of just a straight nut milk. Now with the salt, I like to say that you can start, you can't take it away. So you go ahead and start with, I'm going to put like 4 dashes. There we go. 3 teaspoons of maple syrup. 1, 2, 3. Nice and easy. That's the basic. And anything from there is all fun and games and something to experiment with. So it's going to get a little loud for a second. Go ahead and turn this on. All right, I always go by a very sensitive instrument to find out if I'm doing it right. It's my tongue. It's highly evolved over years to test flavors. So this one tastes great as it is. That was a pretty good, we nailed it on the first try. Now, if we want to play with this a little bit and make it a little bit more fun, what we can do is add a tiny, like I'm talking 3 or 4 drops of vanilla extract. There we go. Just a little tiny bit. And normally I share this with everyone, but since we're all in different places, that's not really practical today. I'm going to make this one a little bit more exciting. And I'm also going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of cacao. Let's see where that goes. Sometimes cacao can be a little bitter, so we might have to add a little bit more sweet to it. Always let it run for about a minute or so that make sure you get it fully blended. Give myself a little taste here. Could use a little bit more cacao. We're going to make like a chocolate nectar of the gods. Now, the reason I call this class Nectar of the Gods is because I believe that each of us has a little bit of God in us. And if we start treating each other and the planet like that, we might have a chance to return to the Garden of Eden. Now, let's fire this thing up again. But it starts with how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves. Okay, let's see how that one went. Much better. Chocolate milk. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in a jar and then we'll start the next one. Another type of nut I like to use that's really good for this are macadamias. That'll be our next flavor. To me, macadamias, they're my favorite nut. Now you can also, by the way, sift this through a sieve or cheesecloth. I personally don't mind the chunks in there. Some people do, but you just put it like this in the fridge. We now have chocolate milk that will last us all week. I don't use any kind of, obviously, guar gum or xanthan gum. Those things are binders, and you'll find that in most commercially available nut milks. And the reason they put those in there is because they want to keep it bound together. Now, the problem with those binders is that they actually can lead to binding in our gut, and that can lead to cancer. There's an ingredient known as carrageenan, which is a seaweed product. The problem is it sticks to the lower intestines, and it can cause things that are not supposed to stay stuck to your intestine to be stuck to your intestine. So now I'm putting the 6 cups of water, half a cup of macadamias. All I'm doing in the sink, by the way, is getting the macadamias and dumping them into a strainer so I can remove the water and still have the nuts. So now I got, what's that? Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to the original recipe, which will be a tablespoon of fat, coconut oil, this time I'm going to use stevia just because I want to change it up a little bit. I'll use about a half a dropper here, which I believe is a 1 milligram dropper, so about half a milligram of stevia right there. Now, the 3 main ingredients to this are nuts, sweet, fat, and salt. I guess there's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 dashes of salt. We got the sweet, we put the fat in, we got the nuts. So we're ready to rock. Let's see what we can do.
Use whatever kind of blender you like. I like to use a Vitamix, high powered, super reliable.
Now, once you make the nut milk, it will last approximately 3 to 5 days in the refrigerator. And what will happen is it will get like it'll separate, right? Because it doesn't have any kind of binder. If it separates, no problem. You just grab this thing, shake it up, and use it however you want. I like to use it in teas, mushroom elixirs, stuff like that. Super tasty. Macadamia is my favorite, for sure. Now, before I go on, I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to see if there's any questions anyone has. I can answer some questions now before we get too far ahead. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No.
I just hopped on. This looks so interesting, so I'm taking it all in.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we're just talking. So you just popped in. You missed the whole thing.
No. I ran
Okay.
out.
Are you familiar with sprouting at all? I can start. I can share that part again.
Adore sprouted almonds. And is this the avenue we're speaking in?
Yeah, we're talking about sprouted nut milks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
you're
basically,
baking.
once you sprout your almonds, you can throw them in some water, like a half a cup to about 6 cups of water, and you can make nut milk. Now that's a very plain way of doing it. What I like to do is add some coconut oil, which is a fat, you know, a healthy fat, either some stevia or possibly some honey. We can even use maple syrup or dates to actually add a little bit of sweet to it, and then a tiny bit of salt. Comes out really good that way. You can make it chocolate flavored by adding cacao. I'm just going through all the different ingredients. There's so many different variations that you can have, but the best thing is to start trying it and then playing with it and experimenting for yourself.
Thank you. This is amazing. I'm going to mute myself.
You're so welcome. One of the other things I'd like to share is about basically regenerative agriculture. If you guys aren't familiar with regenerative agriculture, it's a way of growing food that makes not only our food more nutritious, up to 30% more nutritious, it also sequesters 3 to 7 times as much carbon per square acre. And if you look in the chat there, I dropped in a couple films about that and a white paper. So the white paper, if you go to that, that was the most positive thing I've read in years, because according to that white paper, within 5 years of switching the whole world over to regenerative agriculture, we could avert the climate crisis. So for me, that was super powerful. The other websites in there, Kiss the Ground, that's an advocacy group that advocates all kinds of public speaking and opportunities about regenerative agriculture and how to support it. Now, one of the other things I wanted to share with you about, we talked about earlier, is the reason we're doing the sprouting is because of the lectins and the phytic acid. Now, this book here, written by Dr. Gundry, it's also in the notes. It's called The Plant Paradox. And Dr. Gundry talks about how you can heal yourself by avoiding certain plants which have a high concentration of lectins. You can also prepare your foods in a certain way that eliminates the lectins. So it's a super powerful book on healing your gut and making yourself feel fully energized and well. This other book here is a great book too. It's called Nourishing Traditions. It's by Sally Fallon, and it's based on the work of Weston A. Price. And they also talk about sprouting. They have some recipes in here for sprouting. Now, the reason for me that I started doing the sprouting was because of my digestive issues. But what I found was after you sprout the nuts, then you end up with these moist nuts that get moldy really fast, and the texture is not great. So you either have to put them in the refrigerator right away and then eat them and they're cold and mushy. Or what I started to do, and here's an example of them, is place them in a dehydrator until they became crunchy again, which actually preserves them naturally. And it brings back the crunch, and it also locks in the flavor, because what we do with rich nuts is we add all kinds of seasonings and such to them to make them really delicious. And that's actually a shortcut to this whole process I showed you, is if you were to get like some of our rich nuts, like this maple pecan flavor, which is super tasty to eat on its own. It's a great snack, but you can also just throw these in the blender, put in a little bit of salt and maybe a little bit of fat, and then you get this amazing nut milk, which is already pre-sprouted. That's a shortcut to it. I'm gonna put this one in the jar. And then we can do one more. And this time I'll use the nuts that are already dried. So there's all kinds of different types of dehydrators. Excalibur makes it a good one. There's also LEM products. They have great dehydrators. They're a little bit more industrial. Might be more than you would need for your home. But what I'll do is get a half a cup of these already pre-dried ones that are already soaked and dried.
By the way, if you don't have a measuring cup,
a half a cup is about 1 handful. So if you grab 1 handful, throw them in, sprouted already, fill it with water. 6 cups of water in my blender. I don't know how big your blender is, but that's about what fits in here. It'll vary from person to person. And then we go through our same process: fat, sweet, salt. This time I'm going to use honey just because I want to change it up a little bit. And for the fats, I wouldn't recommend using butter because I think it'll make it go, it'll go bad faster if you use butter. But if you use coconut, it's not as, doesn't go bad as fast. And you may find that the fat solidifies when you put it in the refrigerator because of the temperature change, which is fine. Once you bring it out and shake it up, or if it's super solid, you can break it out and throw it into your blender again. Now I'm gonna put a teaspoon of honey, fresh local honey, which is good for you, helps boost your immune system, makes things super tasty. Also makes a bit of a mess. So we got the fat, we got the salt, and we got the sweet. And then we'll give it a blend. Try this one, see what it's like. So this one's lacking a little bit. Tastes sweet, but it needs maybe a little salt. So give it a little bit more salt, another 4 shakes. Try it again. Salt actually helps bring out the flavor, other flavors. See what we got. Where is everyone in from, by the way? Just curious where everyone's from. You want to put it in the chat so I can see? Much better. Honey, cashew, sea salt. Now I want to show you an example of the separation here. As you can see, it's starting to separate into the layers. What I'll do quickly is pour this one through here and we'll filter out actually I'll do it here so I don't spill everywhere. And we'll filter out the thicker chunks of the nuts, and so you just get a little bit more of a thinner liquid if you're not into having a bunch of chunks in your milk. But first we should definitely shake it. Voila. You can see it starts to get a little slow because it's filling up with the particulates. You just smoosh it around a little bit, get the chunks out. And now we have going to bring this closer to the camera so you guys can see this. Okay, you see all the thick, chunky paste in here? That's the more solid pieces. So now you'll have just more of a milk type of thing without the solids. Like I said, oh, I spilled. Like I said, I personally don't mind the solid parts, but some people do. And now we got chocolate milk. that is plant-based, packed with proteins, fats, and all kinds of phytonutrients, lots of minerals in nuts, and especially now that they're soaked, we've unlocked all that nutrition. Wow. Okay. That's basically it. Simple, easy, and delicious. Oops. Does everyone feel comfortable they can do this at home? You can see it's starting to get quite pasty in there. That's all the solids. Boom. Then you just put that back into your jar. I'm going to do it over the sink. And there you have it. Sprouted N.O.G, nectar of the gods. Have fun experimenting on your own and playing with it, trying different nuts. And if you need to reach me, rich@richnuts.com. If you have any questions, I'll open up and answer any questions you have. We also have delicious nuts from online at richnuts.com, different flavors, different combinations. We'll be coming out with some really cool nut butter soon. Thank you all for your time and enjoy the rest of your own conference. That one's really good. I wish I could give you some digitally. Thanks for stopping in.